Equation, y equals, right? We make it an equation. So y equals amplitude of 3, so I'm going to put a 3. Direction change, no direction change, so no negative in the front. Done, done. I always read the problem carefully. They're saying let's make a cosine, so we'll write COS for cosine. I'm gonna kind of make my little space for B and for any shifting. Vertical shift is up 4. Another alternate for that is sometimes, and some textbooks write it this way also, is they'll put the vertical shift in the front so that you might see it as plus or minus D plus or minus A trig B. X plus or minus C. So you'll see that. So if you ever run into a textbook or if you take a pre-calc in a college or something and they have that, the vertical shift can go in the front as well. Sort of this, instead of sticking it out back, it sticks it up here. Okay. So I like it at the back though, so plus 4. Phase shift is left pi, so x plus pi with a b value too. Say that again? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wait, okay, ask me again. Can you have your own way of writing it? Things have to be in certain places. Yes. Okay. Yes, there's more than one way to write it correctly, and you can make whatever notes you need. But like some of the things, like the amplitude for 3 has to be multiplied, like it has to be here. Well, you want to show me what you wrote? Write it on the board.
I have the same answer.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just I didn't do the plus 4 first before the.
Okay. Oh yes, that's fine. Yes. The order that you write it all down in, you mean, okay, yes. That doesn't matter. I'm not watching like, okay, I was just going left to right. I read it and kind of just did everything I saw as it came up. If you want to read the whole thing, you're like, okay, now let me grab the pieces I need and put them together. Yes. I understand what you're saying. I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay. So we love those problems because other than figuring out B, there's not a lot of thinking to do. Now we have thinking. Now we have thinking. Because now we have to figure out from the picture where all the stuff is. Instead of me telling you, I have to kind of decode it from the picture. But if we organize ourselves, and I have these organized in a certain way, you may think through it in a different order, and that's fine. As long as we find everything we need to write the equation and put them in the correct positions, we're in good shape. So the hardest part of this, other than the period part, is deciding what trig function to use. Because the weird thing is, anything we write as a cosine, we could also write as a sine with a phase shift, and vice versa. Anything we write as a cosine, we could write as a flipped over cosine with a phase shift. Anything we write as a sine, we could write as a flipped over sine with a phase shift. Basically, there are a lot of different answers that are correct. So as we start this today, we're gonna pick an equation, a kind of function to work with. So in problem number 1, I'm going to write a cosine equation. So when I look at a cosine equation, actually, whether I look at a sine or a cosine equation, the first thing, so we're going to write cosine right here. Right. The first thing I'm going to look for is, where's my baseline? Okay. And one of the ways we can, if we can't sort of see our baseline, is if we can find the maximum value and the minimum value, the baseline is going to sit halfway between the maximum and the minimum. Right? So when you look at this, and I'm going to apologize, I'm really bad visually, so I over-explain things that you have to interpret visually. If you're sitting there like, no crap, then I'm slower to understand things visually, so I think I tend to over-explain it. So when I see this, I can see kind of a baseline right there. Okay. I see a baseline, which Miss Schweitzer made some really pretty notes for us here. Miss Schweitzer labeled as VS, vertical shift. I see that at -2. Okay. I think that's kind of nicely indicated on this particular graph. I don't want to write on top of that, but you can kind of see the points that are sort of here. But if we couldn't see that, we could take the top of this that is at +2 and the bottom of that that's at -6. Okay. So I'm going from a +2 max to a -6 minimum. Oops, sorry, that's way too soon. There we go. Okay. And you can average them together. 2 plus -6 divided by 2 is -4 divided by 2 is -2. That's where my baseline is. If you don't like that, you're like, I hate adding and subtracting with pot sign numbers. Think about if you were going to go from 2 to -6. 2, 1, 0, oops, backwards. This is going to look weird. Okay. Maybe I'll do it this way. So it'll be 2, 1, 0, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6. And I don't know if you remember doing this. It's like elementary school or looking for the median. You like count your way into the middle. If you count your way and you count your way that's the middle. Okay. So lots of different ways to see or calculate that between -6 and 2 the baseline is at -2. How are we doing with that? Is that all right? Yeah? Baseline at -2? Okay. So if this is -2, the amount of space from here to here on either side should be equal, and that's going to be your amplitude. So from -2 to 2 is 4 units. From -2 to -6 is 4 units. We've got an amplitude of 4. Number of units from baseline to the max or min, because it's symmetric. If we've got some, it's the same distance, it's periodic, it's got the cycles are the same. So 4 units above, 4 units below, 4 units above, 4 units below. Now, if we're going to do a cosine graph, this is the hardest part. You have to think about where a cosine graph starts. A cosine graph starts above the baseline. And so if I was going to highlight a cosine section looks like that. It looks like a V-ish kind of shape. That is one cosine chunk. And I started my cosine chunk from when I started at 0, I ended that, in this case, at 2 pi. So my period is 2 pi, which means a B of 1. And the last thing, if we look at where we started, if we can start our graph on the y-axis, then there's no phase shift. Phase shift, I keep saying that's the hardest part. That's the hardest part. It's all a little tricky. Phase shift, I think, it can be tricky. Okay. So if I pick this section of the graph to be my model, if this is what I'm picking, this little piece right here, then I'm talking about a regular cosine model over a period of 2 pi that has no shifting side to side, no phase shift, but it does have a baseline at -2 and an amplitude at 4. Do we have a direction change? No, not if you consider this as my primary piece. That's a normal looking cosine. That little section is a normal looking cosine section. And so here's what I would write. 4 cosine 1 x, and I don't have any c value, and then -2 out at the end. It's a whole lot easier when they tell us the stuff, for sure. It's a lot harder to analyze the picture and pull the stuff out of it. And I know for some of you, the most stressful part is, well, how did you know to highlight that section and base all your answers off that section? Okay. It's the easiest one to do, and that's one of the reasons I picked it. I have to pick one period of graph, I know if I start kind of just like my basics, if I'm picking a single cycle of sine, I'm picking something that looks like that. If I'm picking a single cycle of cosine, I'm picking something that looks like that. So if I can, that's what I'm shooting for, a regular sine or a regular cosine, if I can get it. And which would mean my first point is right on the y-axis. Now, if I don't have that option, then I'm going to have to get into phase shifts, but you'll be fine and we'll figure it out. But this is always the first thing I look at is like, okay, can I literally start on the y-axis and get a regular looking sine wiggle cycle and or a regular looking cosine cycle? So starting from y-axis, what can I get from that point? Can I get a regular looking sine? Can I get a regular looking cosine? And if I can't, then we'll talk about what to do next. Okay. So let's look at the next one. Once again, we are kind of trying to make this a little easier. So we're telling you something to focus on. So if this is my y-axis, and I go like that, see what you can tell me looking at this green section kind of as our primary section. What kind of equation are you going to write? This is pi. That's 2. Just in case your numbers are a little low or a little hard to see. So first things I see, once I highlight that section and I'm like, okay, let's all talk about this graph based on that section, I see a flipped over sine. So a sine with a direction change going on, with an amplitude of 2 around a vertical shift or baseline at 3. Are you able to see those pieces? Okay. So if you have a sine, sines start on the baseline. A sine curve starts on the baseline, phase shift, none. It looks like my period here is 2 pi. So that means B value is 1. If we do enough of these, you start to say, well, like we have certain B values that happen a lot. If we have a normal 0 to 2 pi, my B value is 1. Taylor, question. Okay, good question. Amplitude is always positive, so no, we would still say 2, but we are going to have to write negative 2 in the equation. So, and this is where it's like, it's semantics. It's what you say. Technically, the amplitude is a distance, and so it's always positive. It's never negative. The negative does something else. So it does have an amplitude of 2 with a direction change. Okay. Yes? It's technically not a, I don't think this is a period change, no.
So can we just put none, or would we have to put 2 pi?
Well, I think it's good to acknowledge that the period is 2 pi, which is normal. I think that's better to say than none, because it's just like, what is the period? Huh? You could put B equals 1, yeah. I would prefer you don't write 1, you write B equals 1, because that's a little bit different than the period being 1. So, negative 2 sine, oops. If you want to put the 1, you can, x plus 30. This is when I'm starting to think about what I want to do next. We are not ready to do that. These are shifted. Okay. Try the next one. I'm going to highlight a sine curve for you. And you can see that that curve ends at pi. And then take a look at number 4, because we're gonna get to the end of the class here, and this is where we'll pick up next time. But if you want to see if you can practice number 3 the way I've highlighted it, and then check out how I'm going to highlight number 4. I'm going to highlight number 4 like that. Okay. So here's the section I want you to look at on number 4. See if you can try those 2. I'm not going to check these next time, so if you don't do them, you don't do them. But, you know, it's good to not, completely not just stop thinking about stuff and then try to think about it again. So try number 3, and then see about number 4. And then we will be picking up with this next time. Well, I guess she had like built-in homework here. Okay, I also photocopied another page for homework. So what's today? Today's Tuesday. No. Yes, today's Tuesday. Okay. So I am after school today. If you want to come in and work on anything, if you're feeling a little stressed about this and you want to go over some extra things with it, We do have third period today and Thursday. If you were uncomfortable with how you did on your Unit 3 test, and you want to try to do a retake for your Unit 3 test, the deadline to do that is, pretty generous here, is going to be March 24th. That's a Thursday, sort of, bless you, right before the last week of the quarter. If you want to do that, I recommend coming in and sitting down and going over your test some more during a third period or after school to see what kind of mistakes you made. I also would recommend doing the Unit 3 review again and, maybe coming in and talking about problems with it. If you're going to retake, it usually takes sort of two steps. There's the time that you actually come to do the retake and the time that you use to prepare for the retake. So skipping the preparing step usually means that the retake isn't super helpful. Retakes are only if your grade was less than an 80%. And a retake maxes you out at an 80. So if you have any further questions about the retake for Unit 3, if you're not sure if you should think about it or what to do about that, or if you want to schedule a particular day to do it, feel free to talk to me about that. Reminder, just in case you forgot, we do have an early release on Thursday, because then we have some countywide, and we will have, so we'll have 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th, all in a row, and then grab and go lunch at the end of the day.
Thursday odd or even?
Odd. Yeah. So 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th,
What if I have academy?
grab and go. I don't know
Do I
what,
just go home?
I have no idea how that works. I don't know what happens with Academy.
Cause it's like third period and then I go. So, wait, when is 5th and 7th period?
So the times, here are the, so we'll have 1st till like 9:15, and then we'll have 3rd till like
Yeah, the
10:30.
last time that happened, they just sent us to the library.
Okay, I don't have any idea.
That means I'm just gonna.
So you can ask in your sub school, and if your parents want to sign you out after 3rd because you would normally go to Academy and you're not going, that's up to y'all. Okay. You're welcome. It's like Academy. I don't know how Academy gets coordinated on all the other days. I have it's hard.
Especially on like half days.
It's half days and early, all those things are tricky. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So early release Thursday, which is an A day. We're still having class, so be here for in the morning. Don't be like, nobody's gonna do anything. Yours truly is gonna do stuff.